I knew something was off the moment I saw her Subaru parked halfway across my gravel driveway, engine still running like she owned the place. Her name was Brenda. Brenda Lockley. Middle-aged, stiff-shouldered, always in that lime green windbreaker, and head of our HOA, the bane of anyone who dared paint their shutters the wrong shade of charcoal. I live on the edge of the development, where my ranch stretches out past the HOA's jurisdiction, or so I thought. She was standing near my horse paddock, hands on hips, squinting at my new equipment shed like it owed her money. I stepped out from the barn, wiping my hands. "Brenda, you lost," she turned, already mid-eye roll. "Zayden, that structure violates Article 8, Section 3. "It wasn't approved by the board," I laughed. "Yeah, because it's not in your territory. This ranch was grandfathered in, you know that." "That was before the annexation vote," she said, pulling out a clipboard like it was a badge. "We extended our jurisdiction. You were notified." "No, Brenda. You mailed a flyer to the wrong address, held the vote behind closed doors, and hoped nobody would notice." She marched past me toward the shed, heels crunching over dirt and straw. "I'm inspecting to make sure there's no code violation." I followed her, irritation building. "You're trespassing." Brenda ignored me, peeking into the shed's open door. This could be a safety hazard. Exposed tools, unpermitted structure, I'd had enough. "All right," I said, walking back toward the front gate. "You want to play games?" She didn't even look up. I climbed into my truck, pulled forward, and shut the ranch's front gate. Big, steel-barred, padlocked. Brenda was still poking around the shed like she was on a mission from God. I left her there. I drove off to town, grabbed dinner, visited my buddy's auto shop, and came back just before midnight. Her car was still there, engine off now. The porch lights lit her silhouette near the barn, pacing like a caged animal. I stepped out of my truck, leaned against the door. "Enjoy your inspection. You're going to regret this," she snapped, storming toward the gate like I'd kidnapped her. "No, Brenda," I said, unlocking it slowly. "You're going to regret trespassing." She opened her mouth to fire back, but headlights turned into my drive, and not just any headlights. Sheriff Wilcox, he stepped out, confused. "Got a call about a woman locked in on private property." Brenda lit up. "Yes, he illegally detained me." I shook my head. "Sheriff, she broke onto my land without a warrant, without cause. I've got it all on camera." "Want to see?" Sheriff Wilcox looked between us. "Brenda, did you go past the fence line without permission?" "I'm the HOA president," she barked. "I don't need permission." Wilcox raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, you do." Sheriff Wilcox walked the perimeter of my fence in silence, his boots crunching over the gravel as he glanced at the camera mounted on the barn's corner. He didn't say anything for a while, just took in the scene like a man weighing whether to laugh or sigh. Brenda stood with her arms folded tighter than her expression, glaring holes into the back of my head. "Brenda," Wilcox finally said, "you know this land isn't under HOA authority, right?" "I explained," she said, voice clipped. "We passed a jurisdictional expansion. The board voted." "It was unanimous." Wilcox tilted his head. "A board vote doesn't override zoning law. This ranch is county land. You'd need county commission approval, not a private vote." "It was filed," she insisted, digging into her leather-bound folder. "Right here stamped." "We submitted it to the planning office weeks ago." I crossed my arms. "Submitting isn't the same as approval. You tried to annex private property without proper notice or consent. That's not just shady, it might be fraud." Brenda's jaw twitched, but she said nothing. Wilcox took the folder, flipping through the papers, his brow furrowed. "These signatures, these are all board members, no resident signatures, no county clerk stamp. Brenda, this is just internal paperwork." They were informed. He raised a hand. "Stop, you didn't follow procedure. And you entered this property without a court order or owner permission. That's criminal trespass." She shifted her weight, suddenly less righteous. "I thought it would be resolved quickly." "I didn't expect to be locked in." "You expected to come onto someone else's land, uninvited, and start poking around." Wilcox stared at her. "You're lucky he didn't have livestock loose. You could have gotten kicked in the head." I kept my mouth shut, letting the sheriff handle it. He was already pulling his radio from his belt. "Dispatch, I need to log a trespassing report. Homeowner has surveillance footage. Send out a unit to take the statement and collect evidence." Brenda's face drained. "You're arresting me." "Not tonight," he said, "but you're under investigation. You'll be contacted, and I'd recommend you don't set foot past this fence again unless you're invited or holding a warrant." As he handed her folder back, a second cruiser rolled up the drive. Deputy Lena Morales stepped out, young but sharp-eyed, clipboard already in hand. Wilcox nodded toward me. "Zayden'll show you the footage. He's got the timestamp. You'll want to log it immediately." Brenda turned to me, something desperate behind her eyes now. "You're really escalating this." "Over a misunderstanding. You made it a legal matter the moment you stepped onto my property without cause," I said. "You're the one who escalated." She didn't answer. Just stormed back to her Subaru, flung the door open, and slammed it behind her hard enough to set off her own car alarm. She peeled out of the drive, tires kicking up a cloud of dust that drifted lazily across the pasture. Wilcox glanced over. "You know this isn't the first time I've had complaints about your HOA, but this is the first time someone's pressed charges." "You might have just opened the floodgates." I nodded. "Good. Maybe it's time someone did." Inside the barn, I pulled the footage from the hard drive clear as day. Brenda walking past the gate, uninvited, inspecting structures, photographing equipment, even peeking into the trailer where I keep hay bales and vet supplies. Lena took careful notes, time-stamped each clip, and transferred it all to a department flash drive. "Do you want to file a restraining order?" she asked when we finished. I considered it. "Not yet, but if she shows up again, I'll do it without blinking." Lena nodded. "Understood." By the time the cruisers pulled away, the sky was already tipping toward dawn. I stood on the porch with a mug of black coffee, watching the last tail light disappear over the hill. For the first time in months, the ranch felt like my own again, but it didn't stay quiet. The next morning, I found a letter taped to my mailbox, which was strange because I had a locked box on the county road. This note was hand-delivered. No envelope, just a folded sheet with my name scribbled in red ink. It read, "Cease all hostility against the HOA. Refusal to comply will result in legal action, liens, and coordinated enforcement. You have been warned." No signature, no letterhead, just veiled threats scrawled like a ransom note. I brought it inside, laid it flat on the table, and took photos. Then I drove straight to the sheriff's office and handed it over. Wilcox read it once, then twice, before setting it down. "This ain't from the board," he said. "This is personal. They're trying to intimidate me, or provoke a mistake," he said. "They know they're in trouble. You've got them cornered." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then I'm not backing down." Back at the ranch, I installed motion-triggered floodlights along the road and set 3 more cameras, one at the gate, one facing the barn, and one high in the oak tree that overlooked the paddock. If anyone so much as stepped past the fence line again, I'd have them on record from 4 angles. That night, I called a few neighbors, ones I trusted. Turned out I wasn't alone. 2 other residents had received similar threats in the past month after refusing to pay mysterious assessment fees that weren't listed in the bylaws. One woman, a retired nurse named Gloria, had her backyard flagged for unauthorized vegetation after planting tomatoes. Another, a veteran named Carl, had been fined for excessive flag display, his offense. Flying the American flag from a 20-foot pole. They'd all tried to push back, but without evidence or support, the HOA steamrolled them. Now, things were different. I invited them over for coffee the next morning. They arrived one by one, Gloria in a wide-brimmed sun hat, Carl with a thermos and his service dog, and a third neighbor, Maya, who'd been hit with a violation for having wind chimes that disrupted community tranquility. We sat around my kitchen table with folders, violation notices, and HOA newsletters spread between us. Maya tapped a page. "These emergency meetings they keep referencing, none of us were told about them. No minutes, no transparency," Gloria added. "They're fabricating violations." I called the landscaping company they claimed inspected my garden. Turns out that company hasn't worked in the area in over a year. Carl leaned forward. What do we do? I looked at each of them. We build a case, document everything, we go to the county clerk, audit every filing they've made. If anything's forged, we file charges, not complaints, charges. They nodded, determination setting in. We didn't waste time. That week, we gathered every document we could find. Meeting records, newsletters, violation codes, payment receipts. Maya's cousin was a paralegal. She helped us organize it all into a digital archive. Carl called in a favor from an old army buddy who now worked in local media. Gloria, turns out, used to be a city council stenographer and knew exactly how to file public records requests. The more we dug, the worse it got. The HOA had filed 4 false liens against residents in the past year, none of them legally enforceable. They'd voted on budget increases without quorum. And most damning of all, they'd used HOA funds to pay for legal representation in Brenda's personal property lawsuit from last fall, something the covenants strictly forbade. We had it all. Receipts, recordings, statements, and we were just getting started. Carl pulled up just after sunrise with a stack of manila envelopes under one arm and a worn laptop under the other. He didn't say a word until he was sitting at my kitchen table, his thermos hissing quietly as he poured coffee into a travel mug the size of my forearm. I got the financials, he said, flipping open a folder. They've been funneling money into a side account, not technically illegal unless you're using it for personal benefit. Maya slid her tablet closer, tapping the screen with one painted fingernail. They are. Look, Brenda wrote checks from that account to a company called Pinewell Consulting. Business license says it's owned by her cousin. Same last name, same address as her old tax filings. Gloria adjusted her glasses, leaning in. The account's under the HOA's name. That means she's laundering HOA dues through a fake vendor. That's embezzlement. I sat back, stunned for a second. Did you just say we caught her committing a felony? Maya nodded slowly. Multiple, if you count the false liens and the fraudulent vote. Add the misuse of legal funds and the trespassing charge, and she's looking at real time. Carl pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Got it all saved here. Verified through the county records office, too. I had them notarize the time-stamped filings. No room for her to claim it's fabricated. I stood, walked to the window, and stared across the pasture. The fog was lifting off the fields in long, low ribbons. Somewhere near the tree line, a hawk coasted in slow circles. Brenda had spent years building her little empire, and now it was about to collapse like rotted lumber. We take this to the sheriff today, I said. No more waiting. Gloria set down her mug. You sure you're ready? Once this hits, there's no putting it back in the box. She trespassed, I replied. She forged documents. She stole from her neighbors. I'm more than ready. By noon, we were sitting across from Sheriff Wilcox in his office, a stack of printed evidence and notarized affidavits between us. He didn't say much at first, just read page after page with a crease forming between his eyebrows. Pinewell Consulting, he muttered. This is the same outfit that billed for landscaping last quarter. I remember the name, looked it up when Carl called. No online presence, no listed employees. I nodded. Because it doesn't exist, it's a shell. Wilcox exhaled through his nose, then picked up the phone. Get me Assistant DA Turner, now. We waited while the call went through. When Turner picked up, Wilcox didn't waste time. I've got a file here showing misuse of HOA funds, fake vendor payments, and what looks like a coordinated effort to defraud residents. 4 witnesses, verified county documents, and a digital trail. He listened for a moment, then nodded. We'll bring it over within the hour. When he hung up, he looked at each of us carefully. You just kicked over a hornet's nest. Turner's going to want to move fast. If this checks out, and I think it does, we're talking indictments. Maya leaned forward. How soon do they act? Wilcox stood, opening a filing cabinet behind his desk. If Turner's smart, before Brenda knows she's being investigated. He pulled out a warrant template and started filling in fields. I need copies of every document, every witness statement. We go in clean, or she'll wriggle out of it. By the time we left the station, a warrant for Brenda's home and HOA office had been prepped for review. Turner's office was already drafting subpoenas for board members and HOA bank records. Things were moving faster than I'd expected. And still, none of us knew just how deep it went. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it ring out until something told me to answer. "This Zayden?" the voice asked, low and gravelly. "Yeah, who's asking?" Name's Finch. "I used to do security systems for the HOA. Quit last year. Got tired of being asked to install cameras without telling the homeowners." I stood up, heart suddenly kicking harder. "You saying they were spying on people?" "I'm saying Brenda paid me cash to put a wireless cam on Carl's back fence. Said it was for community safety. When I asked for the paperwork, she said not to worry. I didn't like that." "Why are you calling me?" "I heard you're the one finally standing up to her. Thought you should know there's probably footage of your place too. Might be encrypted, but it's stored in the HOA office. If they know you're coming for them, they'll wipe it." "Can you prove what you're saying?" I kept the original install notes. GPS logs, timestamps, even the purchase orders. "Didn't want to get tied up in it, but if this is going to court, I'll testify." "You willing to meet face to face?" He paused. "Tomorrow, I'll bring the files." After I hung up, I called Wilcox back. He didn't seem surprised. "That's consistent with what we're hearing from Turner's office. She's got a pattern: intimidation, surveillance, manipulating board votes. We're upgrading the charges to conspiracy and privacy violations." The next morning, Finch showed up in an old blue pickup with a rusted tailgate and a laptop case duct taped at the corners. Inside were scans of every work order he'd done for the HOA over a 2-year span. One folder was labeled Special Projects. Inside it, a map showing 5 hidden cameras placed on private property, none of which had been disclosed to the homeowners. I copied everything to a secure drive and drove straight to the county courthouse. Turner was already there, sitting in conference with a deputy investigator. She took one look at the files and nodded. "That's the last brick," she said. "We're moving in this afternoon." 3 unmarked cars pulled into the HOA office parking lot just after 3 o'clock. Brenda was inside, flanked by 2 board members and the same cousin listed under Pinewell Consulting. They didn't even make it to the door before officers stepped out and read them their rights. Brenda didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just stood there, frozen, as her hands were cuffed and her cousin was led to a cruiser. The scene was quiet, almost sterile, no shouting, no drama. Just the precise, clinical consequences of months, maybe years of fraud catching up with her. Wilcox called me later that evening. They executed the search warrant. Found hard drives, ledgers, a burner phone with messages about silencing dissenters. "She's going away, Zayden." "You did it." "No," I said, watching the sun set over the paddock. "We did it." Within a week, every board member resigned. Brenda was denied bail, pending multiple felony charges. And Turner's office issued a formal statement recommending the HOA be dissolved pending reorganization under county oversight. The residents held a vote and agreed unanimously. The HOA was dead. Across the neighborhood, people started painting their fences whatever color they wanted. Flags went back up, gardens bloomed, wind chimes rang. Carl put a sign on his lawn that read, "No tyrants beyond this point and me." I reopened the gate, but I added one thing to the post, a plaque carved in iron. It read, "Private property. Trespassers will be locked in." The morning after the arrests, the neighborhood buzzed like a shaken hornet nest, but not with fear. It was relief. The kind of thick, quiet relief that settles into the bones when something heavy has finally been lifted. For the first time in years, people walked their dogs without glancing anxiously at roof lines or checking their mailboxes for threats disguised as notices. The HOA office stood shuttered, the windows papered over by county order. A neon orange sticker marked the door. "Seized property do not enter without court authorization." I'd just finished brushing down the horses when I got a call from Maya. Her voice held a new tone, measured but urgent. "They found something else," she said. "You might want to come down to the clerk's office." By now, we all knew better than to ask what over the phone. When I arrived, Turner and 2 county investigators were reviewing a set of ledgers pulled from a locked drawer inside the HOA's records room. The drawer had been forced open during the search, and what was inside changed everything. Turner slid one of the ledgers toward me. "We thought we had the full scope. We didn't." Inside were columns of resident names, some crossed out, some highlighted. Next to each name was a dollar amount, followed by cryptic notes. "Push to sell," "delay permit," "nudge with fines," and occasionally, "flip confirmed." I stared at the column headers. "What is this?" Turner tapped one of the highlighted entries. "Looks like a property flipping scheme." They were targeting homes, pressuring owners with violations, and once they forced a sale, a shell LLC would buy the property at reduced value. Carl walked in just then, looking like he'd aged 10 years in one night. "That's what happened to the Thompsons," he said. "They left last year. Claimed they couldn't handle the fines anymore." "And the HOA bought their place?" I asked. Turner nodded. "Through a front company. Brenda's cousin is listed as the agent of record." Investigators had traced 3 such companies already, all linked back to either Brenda or former board members through family or offshore filings. The HOA had been operating as a pressure machine, squeezing residents until they sold, then flipping the homes and pocketing the equity. The dues were just smoke. The real money was in turnover. Turner sat down slowly, fingers steepled. "We're adding racketeering to the charges." This wasn't just mismanagement, it was organized theft. By the following week, the state attorney's office had taken over. A grand jury was convened. Brenda's assets were frozen. Her cousin's house was raided. The remaining 3 board members lawyered up immediately, but it was too late. The evidence was a mountain, and at its peak was the night she trespassed on my property, setting off a chain reaction no one could stop. The community, once fractured by fear and compliance, began to rebuild, but not quietly. A town hall was held in the old community center, the first open meeting without HOA oversight in over 10 years. People showed up in flannel, boots, pajamas, some with their kids, others with their pets. No dress codes, no citations, just neighbors. Gloria stood behind the podium, a stack of proposed bylaws in her hand. "We're forming a resident council," she said. "Voluntary, transparent, no fines, no authority over private property, just a network to help each other." There were no objections. Carl proposed a rotating maintenance crew for shared spaces, funded by optional donations. Maya suggested a neighborhood alert system using a group messaging app, so residents could report real emergencies like downed power lines or wildlife, not garden gnomes. Every single motion passed. I kept mostly quiet, but when someone asked what we should do with the old HOA office building, I raised my hand. "Turn it into a library," I said, "or a seed exchange, something that gives back." The room broke into applause. Weeks passed. Brenda's trial date was set for early spring. She'd been denied house arrest after investigators found a second passport and a stash of cash in a hollowed-out wall. The judge called her an active flight risk with a demonstrated pattern of manipulation and deceit. Her lawyer tried to paint her as misunderstood. The jury didn't buy it. By the 3rd day, the courtroom was standing room only. Testimony from residents, financial experts, and even Finch, the former security tech, painted a clear picture of systematic abuse. When Turner played a clip from the hidden surveillance footage, Brenda rifling through Carl's backyard, muttering insults under her breath, the entire room went still. She was convicted on all counts. Sentencing came down hard. 12 years without parole, plus restitution to be paid through asset liquidation. Her cousin took a plea deal and agreed to testify against the remaining board members in exchange for reduced time. After the verdict, I walked out of the courthouse into a drizzle that smelled like wet clay and new beginnings. Gloria caught up to me near the steps. You did more than shut her out, she said. You opened the door for the rest of us. I shrugged. Someone bolted it from the inside. I just kicked it open, she laughed, then looked more serious. You're not going back to being quiet, are you? No chance. The ranch got quieter after that, not in the way it used to be, tense and watchful, but in the way a place feels when it's finally at peace. I took down 2 of the motion sensors, left the cameras in place just in case, and spent more time working with the horses than dealing with paperwork. One afternoon, I got a letter from the county. Not a threat this time, a formal recognition. They were launching a pilot program for independent rural communities to opt out of HOA governance entirely, citing our case as a model for what self-regulation could look like. They asked me to speak at the launch event. I almost said no. But then I remembered the way Brenda used to stand just past the fence line, clipboard in hand, looking at everything I built like it was hers to evaluate. At the event, I stood behind the podium and looked out at rows of farmers, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, people who'd had enough of control disguised as order. We don't need someone watching us to do the right thing, I said. We need someone watching the ones who think they're untouchable. The applause wasn't loud, but it was steady, real. As I drove home that night, I passed the old HOA office. The windows were lit for the first time in months. A new sign hung above the door, Oak Hollow Community Exchange. Inside, people were trading seeds and books and stories, no flags, no fines, just freedom, and on my ranch the gate stayed open, but the lock still hung on the post, just in case someone forgot what happened the last time they crossed the line.